Yeah, so the workshop series is part of our ongoing effort to not just bring great products, but also help the Moxie community be better business people. I know I learn something every time we do one of these. I'm sure Austin's going to drop some knowledge on me today, why I should have more VAs. Anyway, uh, psyched for this one. Welcome.
I am also super excited for today. As Austin and I were planning, we were talking about kind of the power of like why have a VA and then how to actually make it work in your life. And Austin kind of shared about how many VAs he's had and varied experiences. So I'm excited to hear about that. And then also to share as a VA, my other job is what I call it sometimes. Um, as a VA to be able to talk about what makes a great client and how best VAs can help you. So if you are a VA in the chat, make sure you switch your chat over to everyone so we can all meet you. And those who are looking for a VA, you can just, match make over in the chat. And, would love to hear your thoughts too as Austin chats through this presentation. And if you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A. And I'm going to share my screen. And I fully experienced this chaos earlier that I always, that everyone's like, oh, am I sharing? Am I doing it right? Yeah. Okay. I think you can see it. Austin, are you good?
We can see it.
Great.
All right.
I'll let you intro. Go for it. Sorry. Do you want another intro? Do you want me to introduce you? This is
Oh,
Austin.
you
Oh,
don't
no,
have-
we're going to introduce each other here in a second. So
That's right. That's right. So Michelle and Jeff already kind of mentioned why we're here. We're coming at this from two different perspectives, right? Because she has been an operations support specialist, virtual assistant, marketing manager, executive assistant. I have hired a variety of assistants over the last 12 years. And so we thought it would be really cool to just, yes, give you some information about what we think makes a really good relationship, but more than that, just have dialogue. So let's dive in. Michelle, you want to introduce me?
Oh, I do. This is Austin L. Church, not to be confused with churches in Austin, Texas. He has created Freelance Cake, which was your first book. Was that the first book you ever wrote? Or your second?
It's the second. Yeah.
Austin is also the author of a children's book, of which the name I am forgetting, but it exists in the world. Wrote Freelance Cake, has Freelance Cake as his website, and has set the goal of helping 1 million freelancers make $100,000. Did I get those numbers right?
They've changed. I mean, it's much, much bigger now,
Oh,
much more
many,
grandiose.
hundreds of
Inflation.
billions and millions.
Yeah, inflation, Jeff said.
He loves buffalo chicken wings, which is actually how I convinced him to join things here with Moxie. He is a really great LinkedIn read. If you're not following him on LinkedIn, you absolutely should, because that's the only thing I look on LinkedIn for. And fun fact, despite him wearing an Atari shirt, he's never actually played an Atari game. I don't know if that's true. I made that up.
No, that's not true. About half of what you said is true. But it's okay. I'm about to repay you when I introduce
excellent,
you.
Excellent.
Yes. So Michelle Lee is this one is true. She is one of the most encouraging people I've ever met. She is a super fan of pretty much everyone. If she introduces you, she will make you feel like $1,000,000. She's also a former WNBA player, which is really impressive when you figure out that she clocks in at about, what, 4 feet, 11 inches?
Here.
Wait a second. We did connect over our mutual love of buffalo wings. And what is the place called?
Pudgy's Pizza. If you're from upstate New York,
Apparently, it's
the
the
best
place.
wings on the planet.
This one is also true. She is the VA or the operations support specialist you've always wanted. I work with Michelle daily. I have never once seen bad attitude from her. She cannot say the same for me. She probably sees bad attitude from me all the time, but she is a delightful person to work with. She does not complain. She always has a can-do attitude, and she's just one of my favorites. And yes, and she's also established a name for herself in the underground scarf scene for her heirloom. That's not true. Okay, let's get into it, shall we? Let's move on. Let's get into it. Okay, so when we think about hiring a VA, I mean, one of the elephants in the room is like, would a VA want to work for you? You know, like there's something to be said for hospitality and inviting someone into a relatively organized and sane work environment. Now, the rub here is that oftentimes we want to hire VAs to help us clean up our messes, right? But when I see people kind of fail right out of the gate, it's that, you know, you're inviting someone to like this hospital where there's no wayfinding, there are no signs. It's just utter chaos. And so, right out of the gate, if you're wanting to hire a VA, list out like 8 to 10 things that you think they need to know right out of the gate. So, one of the things that I put in my onboarding process is my brand book. If I'm ever wanting someone to represent me, like they need to know what I stand for with Freelance Cake. So that's just one of the things that you could include, right? But beyond onboarding, right? When you think about inviting a VA into your business, I think you need to offer them some quick wins. Like everybody wants to feel like they're doing meaningful work and they're doing it well. So if you've made it nearly impossible for someone to show up and not actually get traction quickly because you've already created some well-defined tasks for them to do, like, yeah, it's just going to be harder to establish a really good cadence with someone right out of the gate. So what I would recommend that you do is identify some of your high frequency, low leverage tasks. High frequency, that one's obvious. These tasks happen a lot. Calendar management is a good one, right? Low leverage. Low leverage is something that you're not particularly good at, you don't particularly enjoy, and that doesn't directly produce revenue for your business. So low leverage for me is something like bookkeeping, calendar management, certain types of online research, data entry, right? There is a Chris Ducker, Ducker post. It's something like 101 things to outsource. If you're not sure what your high frequency, low leverage tasks are, go look at his list. Someone can drop the link to that post in the chat. We can put it in the follow-up email too. But define 5 to 8 of these tasks before you hire someone. That way, when they show up, right away, they're taking things off your plate, but they're doing it in a way that's like, you know, up to your standard, right? Okay, then establish a meeting, collaboration, and check-in cadence. For the first probably 30 days with my current VA, who's been with me for 2.5 years now, one of the first things we did right out of the gate is she just told me what she was doing. At the end of every day, she sent me bullet points and said, here's what I did today. So we got more cycles and more quickly because I could say, hey, don't spend your time doing that. Spend your time doing this instead, right? So that's what I would recommend for 30 days. Like, again, that's kind of tedious. So lighten up on that. But right out of the gate, as you're building rapport, you know, your VA can tell you, here's everything I accomplished today. Here's what I spent my time on, right? In terms of meeting and collaboration, we Slack every day. So we have a sort of chit chat communication channel and we're on it all the time, right? And then we just do a deeper check in every 2 weeks. I work from quarterly strategic plans. So every 2 weeks, We pull up the quarterly strategic plan in Notion, which is a tool I use. We look at it together. I tell her what I'm working on. She tells me what she's working on. We look at the projects that support our quarterly goals, figure out status on each one, and then we sort of set the agenda, or I should say itinerary, for the next 2 weeks for both of us, right? And finally, I think this is kind of obvious, but like, nobody wants to work for someone who's condescending, belittling, scatterbrained, unrealistic, unreasonable, rude. So like when you think about like when you hire a VA, you're not hiring the help. You're hiring a human being. Oh, confetti apparently for that. Well, don't mind if I do. Did I freeze on your end?
Yeah, you froze with confetti, but I can still hear you. So continue.
Okay, well, apparently this was fated, right? Like I just made a really great point and it ended with confetti. Um, Hopefully that will change here in a second. Maybe I'll stop my video for the time being. And see if that helps. Okay. But are you the sort of person that anybody else would want to work for? Be the kind of person you would want to work for. Okay, let's keep moving. I feel like I just got real preachy, but I guess I'm okay with that.
Hey, the confetti says otherwise. So
Confetti says everyone's loving it, right? Okay, so with creating a partnership, I'll explain kind of the first two, and then Michelle, I'd love for you to like chime in on like what it's like being on the receiving end, right? Okay, so I have a couple of clients who tried to hire VAs. And their idea of delegation is, hey, I need this stuff done. And I'm sitting here thinking, that's insane. You're asking this other person to be a mind reader, right? Like, you can't say, hey, we really need to clear out my inbox. Like, you got to give me a little bit more to go on than that, right? So you have to explain the task. And what does success look like? What's the goal? State the goal, right? So, for example, when I'm adding a new page to my Webflow website, and Ezekiel, who's actually here today, he is my go-to Webflow designer and developer. And so my VA, her name is Bern, I'll say, hey, I need to get a new landing page up on the website. I want it to say X, Y, and Z. I want to have it up by Friday. And I want it to look very similar to this other page over here. Talk to Ezekiel. Let me know what he needs from us in order to make that happen. Right? So I've explained what the goal is. I've explained the task. And then this is kind of nuanced, but usually I then let people on my team figure out how to get us from point A to Z. So I'm like, here's what I want. Here's like the task. Here's where I want to end up. But it can kind of get tedious if then I tell them, and here's how you need to do every single thing along the way. Like, I just don't think that's effective, that kind of micromanagement. But Michelle, what's your experience with this and what advice would you give?
yeah, I think, and VAs, if you are in the chat, jump in and kind of talk about your experience too, because I think going back to what you were saying, having, every VA is going to be different, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit as well. But I think having like, this is how I like to work. So I have one client who is like, just get this done. I don't want to hear about it again at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just want it to get done. I don't even need to know that it's complete. I have given it to you and now I'm not going to think about it. So that's really good. That's like really good information for me to have. And so I know that up front. And so I accomplish their tasks and get them done. And then I have other clients who like to be copied on every single email. So it's, like if I am in contact with someone on my my client's behalf, they also want to be copied on it. I don't know why, but that's how they like to work. So
Mhm.
I make sure that they're kind of informed on every step of the way, but being really, really crystal clear, like, this is the way I like to work. And then I'm happy to kind of, your point for their getting from point A to point B. I kind of still have my same process, but some people like to be informed at point A1 and A2 and A3. And some people just like to know that, point B has arrived.
Hmm. That's so good. Determine what the client's preferences are in that respect, right? And I'll say on the client side, like when I'm trying to delegate something, I also need to anticipate what my assistant will need in order to do this. So that's number 3 that you see here. What are the links? What are the assets? Are there login credentials? Right? Does she need contact information for somebody? Is she going to need access to a Google Doc that I've never shared with her? Like, we gum up the works, we introduce all the friction when we're trying to delegate, but we don't actually give people what they need. Then they have to come back and say, well, I actually need the username and password if I'm going to log into this account and reconfigure this tool. So have all of that stuff ready. And then finally, before we move on, we already kind of mentioned like high frequency tasks. If you anticipate, again, that word anticipation, if you anticipate that a task is going to happen, we'll say more than like once a month, go ahead and just document the steps. You don't have to, but your VA can. And that way, like every once in a while, when Vern is out of town, and I find myself needing to step in and do a task. And that's what's ironic is now there are times I'm the one who's never done it, but I need to do it. And when I step in and we've already got it documented, well, guess what? This guy can follow instructions. So like that's where like a kind of disciplined commitment to capturing process can even help you as the client, right? Okay, let's move on.
I
And
want to
believe
read
it or
to
not, we only have 17 more of these slides. So that's great.
Marie made such a good point here to create a task template for your clients as they request needs. So yes, really great in when your client can anticipate, but also really awesome as a VA to be able to say like, okay, here's all the stuff that I actually need to get this done.
Yes. Okay. Michelle and I discussed this a lot. I just mentioned credentials. And it's so funny when like I've had a handful of my clients that like maybe we were building a website and I'm like, hey, I need the login credentials for your domain registrar. I need you to make me like a super admin with your content management system, like WordPress, whatever. And they're like, yeah, I'm just not comfortable with that. And you're like, okay, so how are we going to do the project if like, so it is kind of funny that at a certain point, if you're going to hire a VA, you just have to decide that you're going to trust this person. Ideally, some part of your interview and onboarding process helps you kind of verify their trustworthiness. It's true that there are dishonest people out there, both on the client side and the VA side. There are dishonest people. Surprise! But you eventually just have to make the commitment to trust. And I will also say, and then I'll let Michelle speak into this because I really liked her word choice. But when it comes to like recognizing each other's humanness and values, there are great VAs out there who are not going to be a good fit for you. They don't have the right temperament, the right personality, the right strength, the right skill set. And you can decide to not work with a VA simply because it's not the best fit. And it's not you making a statement about them as a person. I've had several VAs that I kept around for way too long because I liked them as people, And that actually blinded me to the fact that they were not getting the job done.
Mm.
Right. And that's not just VAs, that's any service provider. Right. That could be the landscaping company that you've hired, and they're like, no matter how many times you say, hey, I need you to trim the sidewalk in a very specific way, they just don't do it. You're like, if you've spent several weeks determining that this person can't follow instructions or just will not codify new process for you, that's a good sign that it's just not the right fit. And that's okay. So when it comes to any hire, I say hire slowly and fire quickly. Like, decide what you need to see to determine fit. And then if it's not a fit, then just hire slowly, fire quickly. What do you think, Michelle? Tell me
I
more
like
about
that.
humanness and values.
Sorry, I'm also just taking notes for myself over here. Yeah, I mean, I think that I found an interesting niche for myself where I find myself working for a lot of people who have ADHD. And I think earlier you said something about like being scatterbrained, and I realized like that is totally my sweet spot. Is like I love I think that because I personally have a very like neurotypical brain, I love the experience of getting to kind of see the world in another way. One of the things that I think really solidified that, like, oh, this VA thing is pretty awesome is I was chatting with one of my clients and they're like, oh man, like, I know I'll get to that email. It's going to take me like 30 minutes to write it. And I was like, what? I could write that in less than 30 seconds for you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, wait, what? And just through that conversation to be able to say like, oh no, these things give me life. The things that are kind of sucking away all of the, the life from you as like a visionary who like wants to go this direction and follow your passion and go this way. I don't want to do that. I have no desire to like find a passion and be great and go out and like whatever. That's not me. I don't want to do that. I don't want to write a book. I don't want to write a blog. Like I want to help you do your thing. That is where like I find myself. Number 3, they're living in your zone of genius. That is where I find myself like feeling the most alive is, in front of a really great checklist. I really love an Excel spreadsheet. It's one of the things I have loved about Moxie all along the way is being able to have a to-do list and having that focus tab with like, here's what needs to get done today. Like that is my zone. And I recognize that that's not everyone's zone. And that's where like these partnerships become really great is being able to say like, oh yeah, but actually I would love to help you get that done. And it is going to free you up. I think John said this in an earlier workshop, that is going to free you up and your creative brain up to do the thing you're really good at. So finding ways that your operations person, your VA can live in their zone of genius and assist you as, this creative or visionary or whatever your business is, whatever your sweet spot is, be able to let you live in your sweet spot more often, I think is so honestly like amazing. It's like a really good gift to everybody all around.
So well said. I just want to applaud. Like, just like, yeah. I feel
Are you
like
going to get confetti?
we need we need like a soundboard where we can just press a button, and it'll just be like applause. But you brought up something, Michelle, which is like a huge sort of stumbling point for tons of freelancers, consultants, creative entrepreneurs when it comes to hiring a VA. You're decent people and you're like, I don't enjoy doing my own shit work. So why would I ask someone else? Like, you feel bad about delegating things that you find tedious. And like the like mind blown moment for me was when my current VA was like, I actually enjoy some of these and I'm like it almost brought me to tears because I was like, you mean I don't have to feel bad about asking you to do that? like half the things I was asking her to do, I felt like I should apologize for. And she really doesn't mind. Now, I'm sure there are some things that I ask her to do. She rolls her eyes a little bit and she's like, it's just, that's part of any job, though. That's part of my job, right? There are still things that I just don't love doing. But a huge breakthrough for me was that the more time I spend in my zone of genius, the more fulfilled I am in my work. And then if I get the support I need and I find someone, their zone of genius is to do the operational support, there's harmony in that. And that's kind of what Michelle was talking about, is like to actually have a fulfilling, harmonious work relationship with someone else who prefers this type of work, which again, that short circuits my brain. Kind of like in high school, I loved a good essay test because I could totally BS my way through that. But you like give me a math homework where I was supposed to like memorize some stuff, and I'm like, get out of here. Like, so it's that kind of divide where there are certain people who just love like the creative problem solving and the vision casting and that kind of thing. Then there are people who are like, give me a well-defined process and let me knock it out of the park for you. Right. Or let me create my own process, follow it, and free you up to do what you're good at. Okay, let's move on.
I do want to talk quickly. This has been in the chat as well about handing over the keys. One of kind of the things I've learned in the last few months is realizing like I have a client who really I can see needs some help as far as organization and project management, but won't hand over kind of some of the major pieces that I need to be able to actually assist, like answering emails that come in and like managing the project part. And so instead, I find that this client is kind of becoming just a go-between, and now it's extra work for them to say like, oh, hey, can you go do this? And like, well, that person could have just told me. Now you've just made yourself the middleman. And so I've been saying keys a lot because it feels like I've been asked to clean this house, but I don't have keys. So I can like clean the windows every now and then, but like I can see the house needs some cleaning, but I can't actually get in. And I love Greg posted this in chat and said, if you need to hand over admin credentials, create another admin account and that you can later disable or delete. I just love that. I think that's a hot tip.
Well, I use 1Password. So if you use a strong, secure password management platform, you can give people access to passwords without actually sharing the original password. So that's something to keep in mind. And one other thing, Michelle, that you touched on, a couple of other big stumbling blocks for people when they're trying to hire someone. And we don't have time to really go deep into these today, but do you actually derive a sense of significance from being needed by people on your team? And do you position yourself in the middle, and do you micromanage, because it would cause a bit of an identity crisis for you if you were to relinquish control? So it's strange that like this white knuckled grip on outcomes, like a love of quality, and to some degree, even a love of our clients and client experience and satisfying results, that gets us here. But you will not break through to the next level if you don't sort of peel your own fingers off the steering wheel one by one. You have to learn how to like let go of control. It was actually it was this line from "Let My People Go Surfing" by Yvon Chouinard. He's the founder of Patagonia, but he just was like, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, your ability to grow is directly tied into your ability to relinquish control. So many of us have reached this point in our freelance businesses and our consulting businesses where we're just not going to grow up and out until we learn how to relinquish control. And you can do that while also continuing to guarantee positive outcomes. That's what good SOPs are for. Go watch John Saunders' workshop. Q&A. Hit us. Q&A.
So there are quite a few questions. You kind of mentioned this, but feel free to share in chat or others which password hub you use. LastPass, 1Password have been tossed around. If you have a favorite, do either of you, Jeff or Austin, have a favorite?
So I want Jeff's opinion because he understands cybersecurity and just security as a software engineer much better than I do. I use 1Password. As far as I understand, it's gotten hacked less than LastPass. But Jeff, what do you think?
So unfortunately, I was a LastPass customer when they got all of our shit stolen. So yeah, I mean, my stuff's already gone. It's gone, so I just stayed with LastPass. I had like a 27 character master password, so the likelihood that someone will get into it is pretty low. But for people who were on LastPass and had weak passwords, you're kind of out of luck. Change your passwords. And then obviously using two-factor authentication with everything, that's important, because then even if somebody has your password, it doesn't do them much good.
Nice.
Proton Pass is cool. I've played with that one, yes.
Nice. Claudia's asked, how do you know it's the right time to hire a VA?
So great question. When you're cognizant that you're actually spending a lot of time on, I'll call them $10 tasks. I recommend that you pay your VA a livable wage based on where in the world they live, the cost of living. So when I say, and like a $10 task is different, $10 an hour task is different for different people. But if you know that you deliver value in these areas, but you're spending a lot of time on scheduling and calendar stuff with clients, on managing emails, on keeping your, on like finding and setting up and configuring new tools. Like, again, it changes from person to person, but you know what your zone of genius is. You can look at your business and say, there's probably 20% of your time that produces 80% of your revenue. How much of your time are you spending on graphic design, writing, whatever? If it's not 50% or more, it's time to get support. You should be spending at least half of your waking hours doing the work that gets you paid, not doing the work that supports the work that gets you paid. Does that make sense? The really cool thing about this is it's scary at first because it's like, well, I feel like I can't afford a virtual assistant. My experience is maybe you can't afford to not have a virtual assistant, because if the virtual assistant, like whatever you charge per hour or whatever you want your effective hourly rate to be, and then, if you're like, okay, I want to make at least $100 an hour. Okay, could that other person save you just 2 hours a week? Maybe they save you 10, but do the math, right? What's your time worth? What can you pay? Oh, it did it again. Why is it doing that again? Jeff, I think Jeff's doing this. He is controlling Zoom now. But whatever you think your time is worth, do the math. And if that other person frees you up to spend more of your time doing the work that gets you paid, then the math will work out eventually. Oh, John Stone knows. He's like iOS 17 and continuity camera.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so going kind of down that road, what can I expect to pay for a VA?
It depends on where they live and their level of experience, their pricing model, whether you're paying like a flat monthly fee or you're paying them hourly. My VA is on salary, so I pay her salary plus benefits. She's full time with me. But VAs are like any other service provider. You get what you pay for. So find someone that you can afford, and then try to find the very best help you can afford. And that said, there are VAs in countries around the world who are incredible. And because the cost of living in their countries is a little bit lower, you can afford to work with them, pay them fairly, and it's a highly attractive rate to you. So I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer here. Michelle, would you chime in there?
Nope, I love that. I think you'll find, again, it's kind of finding the right fit for you. So sorry, that's like a non-answer. Will you talk a little bit about part-time versus full-time? Have you had experience with both?
Yeah, so I think part-time is good if you're just starting out, and this is like a muscle that you need to build. Like you need to become more accustomed to delegation. Delegation is a muscle, right? So if you're just getting started, do part-time. And if you have a limited budget, you may not be able to afford a full-time VA. If you have a business where the low leverage, high frequency tasks I mentioned are fairly predictable, and it's okay with you if you have a VA who works for like 2 or 3 hours on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because again, they're service providers. If they're part-time with you, they have to have other clients. So the counterpoint to that is if your business is like, it's like if you need someone to like respond in 12 minutes to whatever it is, a part-time VA is never going to be ideal for you. You want to pay for 100% of someone's attention so that they are kind of on call. So if you have full-time needs but only have a part-time budget, just try to be decent and fair to your part-time VA who cannot respond, right when you send them a message on Slack. It may be 17 hours later or the next day. That's part of what you signed up for. Be fair, be the sort of person anyone would want to work for.
Yeah, I find I prefer working part-time. It goes back to a podcast that we had where like I have multiple streams of income at this point. And so if any of my clients were like, see ya, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So I really love, I honestly love like the part-time thing. And I also feel a little bit like kind of depending on the work that you're doing, like if you're hiring someone who's going to help you run and manage projects, if they are doing their job, I always feel like if I'm doing my job, then you don't have that 12-minute need. Like
Yes.
I need to do my job well and be ahead of your schedule, but that also depends on the kind of work you're doing. Like I do have a client where it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like meeting scheduling, and so that will happen and be like, I need to cancel this meeting that's in 6 minutes. So
Mm-hmm.
sort of depends there.
Yeah.
Sarah asked, how important is having someone coming from the industry that you're in? I need project management often involves technical questions or review, which are things I end up having to answer myself.
Great question. Again, it's peculiar to the business. Like so much of the work that I ask my VA to do is more general administrative or operational work. That being said, Byrne has shown a high aptitude to learn just about any tool I throw at her. She's actually better at it than I am at this point. Like she's better at learning new technology than I am. So even when I was getting started with Moxie, I'm like, hey, like help me get up to speed here, right? So yeah, again, it just depends. Like if your business is like technical, you're like Greg. I saw Greg Mount here. He builds websites, and so it's like it's probably going to be hard for him to delegate some of that work to his VA. Maybe he just needs to go hire another. He's subcontract another like specialist, another domain expert, right? So I would parse that carefully. Like don't ask your VA to become a WordPress developer. That may be too much of a stretch. To ask them to help you set up Notion and use that for all your SOPs and manage your calendar and do 100 other things that you never knew you wanted to delegate, that's probably realistic. So again, that may be another non-answer, but it just depends, And I will say an intelligent person, given well-defined SOPs, will surprise you.
Shane asked, do your virtual assistants handle client payments or discuss payment issues with them? I'll answer from my side, Shane. Some clients, yes, some clients, no. Depends on your level with them.
So I typically do all my own invoicing, and then I have a bookkeeper and I have a CPA. So my VA does not interface with my bookkeeper and CPA. I do, but I have clients and I have coaching clients who they've delegated all their invoicing to their VA. So that's absolutely, you can if you want and need to.
I'm going to try to get this last one in too, which has been a common question. Recommendations on where we find a VA.
So
the Moxie Facebook group, apparently.
That
was going to be my answer. The Facebook group. Lots of VAs there who are amazing. What were you going to say, Austin?
I hired Bern, who lives in the Philippines, through a site called onlinejobs.ph. So that's just the country level domain for Philippines. And have a tremendous amount of respect for everyone I've ever worked with in the Philippines. So I'm definitely bullish on that. And Upwork is fine, but it's a huge ocean, right? So another thing to do is ask around. Go ask around in the Moxie Facebook group. Ask your other freelance friends. If somebody has already hired a VA part-time and they've had a really good experience, maybe, it's a fractional thing. So you need a quarter of their time and your friend needs a quarter of their time too. So, it's possible to share. So anyway, get the process started. Write down your very next step. Could be reading that Chris Ducker article, could be talking to someone, could be joining the Moxie Facebook group. Non-subtle pitch. Non-subtle pitch.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here. I hope you got some really great next steps and that you can decide on the next way to continue to grow and scale your business. We'll be back in a couple weeks. Thank you so much. See you on the beach, Jeff.